Hi, my name is Jenny Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and joining us in the studio today is Chase McDowell. He is hoping to unseat U.S. Congressman French Hill in the upcoming Republican primary race. Of course, that is set for next year. Really appreciate having him here in the studio today to tell us all about his upcoming race, his background and experience, and what makes him set to be the next person to unseat French Hill. Chase, thanks for being here with us.
Thanks, Jenny. I appreciate it.
Of course.
And I got to take time to say, I just appreciate what y'all do. I've loved your network ever since y'all launched. I followed it and I appreciate it. I appreciate honest journalism. So I really appreciate it.
Well, those are very kind words, and we certainly appreciate that as well. You have certainly been involved in Arkansas politics and just politics in general for a while, and there may be a lot of our viewers who are familiar with you and your background, but for those who aren't, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your experience, and what's led you here thus far.
Yeah. So I'd always been kind of in Arkansas politics. I grew up in a small town of around 500 people, so that automatically makes you in politics, regardless if you want to be or not. But basically, I have been focused. I started working when I went to college. I started working in an independent pharmacy. My family were small business owners, so I kind of always had a little bit of a foot in politics because I was thankful that my grandfather and my dad would set me down and just explain how business works.
Yeah.
My grandfather had me working at the trucking company at a young age. And he paid me a paycheck just like everybody else. And I took a look and I said, who's this person I'm paying? Who's that? So that's taxes. So
Yeah.
you've got to pay those. And from that point on, I said, well, I don't like that term and I don't like who that is. They weren't out here changing these tires. So, why am I doing that? Why am I having to pay it? But that kind of led me in after I started working in independent pharmacies. I saw how the government had geared itself as anti-small business.
Mm.
And that's a problem. I don't like that. In the very beginning, it was really tough on us fighting these PBMs and a lot of different things that we're fighting to protect those independent pharmacies. But thankfully, we've got some bigger corporations that are starting to join on because it's affecting them too. Unfortunately, it took that. But I've worked across the country. We've worked with voter registration, voter legislation across the country. I've worked on bills for independent pharmacy to protect themselves from PBMs. I've taken on insurance commissioners because that's the real issue and problem with insurance. Yeah. So we've done a lot of that. And then, I was very thankful and blessed that when Jan Morgan decided to run through the United States Senate right there at the end of her campaign, that was probably my greatest campaign that I've ever ran in Arkansas. And I think we did an effective and great job of exposing what we talk about now, which is China buys our farmland and China buys our Arkansas and America. But that wasn't in the headlines until we exposed it. So we've done really good, hard work here in Arkansas. We want to continue that. And that's why I'm home.
Yeah.
I'm here because I want my state to be as great as I've made other states.
Nice. Yeah. Well, and for our viewers, I know that they're going to know this, but if they ever want to look into our old stories on Conduit about China and the connections here and tied to former Governor Asa Hutchinson, all you have to do is go online. And there's probably on Conduit, it's something Conduit has covered for so many years. Lots of good material there. So what made you decide to run? So you have that political history, you have that experience, and then you deciding to jump into this primary race. That's no small feat. What made you decide to do that?
Well, it's not, but to be quite frank with you, I'm tired. I'm tired of working across this country, and I come home and I see that Arkansas is 44th in education. I see that Arkansas's quality of life is low. I hate to see that Mississippi ranked 16th in education. I hate to see that Arkansas is denigrating to a point that, yes, our GDP is high, but our unemployment is high as well. That affects my district, but it also affects the whole state of Arkansas. But also, I just don't quite see the leadership I want across the state. Someone's got to step up and someone has to say, you know what, I'm independent from all of this nonsense, all of this bickering back and forth and all of the nonsense that we get so upset about. That doesn't matter. Which does matter, or what does matter, is $37 trillion in debt. Okay, I'm a millennial. I think Gen X took a break. They've allowed the boomers to take over. They just continuously keep pushing down. I mean, they're the reason that our economic crisis has happened over and over and over again. I've got a boomer I'm running against that's big on crypto. I see 2008 and all of that he's trying to push through to the president. And I don't like that. I think that I have to pay for that. My future children, my future grandchildren have to pay for these things, and enough is enough. At $37 trillion, I can't sit and tell the American people, oh yeah, I'll vote for a bill that's going to add another $5 trillion. No, I can't do that. And at some point in time, we have to have a leader in Arkansas. Louisiana has all of the leadership positions, the whip, the speaker, some of the top senators. Senator Kennedy, I like him. I think
Yeah.
he's great. But at the end of the day, Arkansas employs the most people in the world. So Walmart, our corporations, as much as I might not agree with everything that they do, we do employ the most when it comes down to population wise. And I want that known in every meeting you walk into. I am from the state of Arkansas. You belong in my state. You need to be here. And I really I can't stomach any longer that the people of this great state work, 40% of them work, and they only make $25,000 a year. Right? That's bad. That's hard. And it's hard to be a Republican led state and we don't have the industry in that can supply them with a $50,000 a year job.
Okay, so that all sounds great. And a lot of people are like, yes, I absolutely believe that. I hear that every campaign season. Republicans always say that, but what does that look like tangibly, specifically if Chase, gets elected? What does that look like when you're reducing the size and scope and then you are putting more money back in the pockets of Arkansans? How are you going to do that?
Absolutely. That's actually great. And, I'm a little bit different than most folks. I've already got my plan ready, right? Most people will just tell you what you want to hear. But with me, I'm originally from Southwest Arkansas. We found some of the richest lithium deposits in the country or in the world. We now have a new steel plant. These investments that the president's making with the semiconductor chips, that's a perfect example for building a battery. Arkansas is one of the only states in the South, which now has the highest GDP in the country, that doesn't produce anything for automobiles, right? So most car plants, even international car plants, these different types of things. But this innovation can happen in Arkansas because our tax code, the state tax code is good, but it's definitely not where I want it to be.
Yeah.
Right. But as a federal officer, I don't get to determine that.
Yeah.
What I can determine is I have the ear of the White House that will pressure that to make that happen. That is something that we have a short window to actually be able to use as a platform, which is this president likes business. Sometimes I don't always agree with how he gets it done, but what I want for my state, what I want for an investment is we will start building batteries here because it just makes sense. And that means batteries for medical supplies. It means for car plants. It means for multiple different things. South Carolina just got 3. Well, I'm going to try to take those away. They haven't broke ground yet. Let's try to move into Arkansas. You've got to have someone that's going to go in, that's going to actually say, yeah, no. I offer you something better. And that's just not what's happening. France, the only thing he's advocating for is crypto. That's it. He wants to just strictly stick to cryptocurrency. And that's an issue and a problem for me because he wants to get rid of a cashless society. Now, that's not something that I just feel. That's legitimately what he wrote to the Federal Reserve in 2021 and advocated that they do this. And that's a problem for me because old cash is good. Old money is good. And the idea that we're trying to move away and we're trying to get away from traditional business, crypto is not going to help small business owners. It's not going to help farmers. It's definitely not going to help community banks because they're going to be priced out because they're never going to be able to compete against JP Morgan Chase or any of these big conglomerates that will be able to buy these crypto coins. Your local credit union, that's just not going to happen. So we got to keep it local. Those investments happen local. And then one big industry in one part of Arkansas means that dress shops open in the local pharmacies and hospitals and doctors' offices. I believe in a localized economy. And I don't like a lot of federal overreach, but it's very important that we do focus on that investment, that if we can get one thing in, it's just always one thing, one issue. But at the battery plant makes perfect sense. Tax purposes, having to move the lithium from here to South Carolina, it's just it doesn't make any sense, but I can do it right here. 3 hours south is where the lithium is. 3 hours north is where the steel is. We meet in the middle in my district or any other part of the state. I really don't care about that part. I just want the median average income for the state of Arkansas to be somewhere around the national average, which is $75,000 a year.
How does that, so with the lithium and some other bills that were passed specifically here down in Little Rock, the way that they do that is they dangle a carrot and a lot of incentives to entice businesses or corporations to come here. And oftentimes that ends up being a tax increase for Arkansans in some way or the other whenever you have all these particular carve outs. So as you're saying, well, I'm going to bring in this business or entice this business to come here. What does that look like within your plan? Are you carving out special, things for these companies, incentivizing packages? What does that look like in your mind?
No. So our current rate, I think, is perfectly fine for what I can offer them, which is already our tax benefits that are on the books already are better than South Carolina's. So just not even really offering anything other than this is easier, simpler, and quicker for you by harvesting it here. Also, we are a main artery for the rest of the country. I mean, we have main interstate systems that are right here, and we lead right to Detroit. So, I mean, and also we connect to all the way to Atlanta, Georgia. So
Mm.
we actually are better than South Carolina to offer this for them. But it's also medical supplies. It's also, we have Hewlett Packard. We have a lot of different things in the second congressional district that I want those semiconductor chips made. But also, it's not just those two things. We also need to look into machinery, machinists that will create the products that are necessary for car production. So there's that the CNC machines, 3D printing, all of these different types of things, coupled with the AI that they need for that. It just makes sense to build them in Arkansas than it does in South Carolina or North Carolina. Property values are more expensive. I have land. I got a lot of land in Arkansas actually to offer. And I think that that's where we move towards machinist shops make a ton of money and they're very good paying jobs. And we can move products quickly in Arkansas. And that's what I'm geared towards. And it's using the codes we already have. Now, I agree with you. It's going to take me in my office to get it done because I know what you're talking about at the state capitol.
Yeah, that
And I know what you're talking about with mayors and city councils. And somewhat, as much as I hate to do it, intimidation works in that factor. And you get in the room and you just say, look, either you do it or you get exposed.
well, and it's not the government's role. You and I you could differ on this, but it's also not, while all of those things are great, bringing in manufacturing jobs, that's not the government's role, or at least it kind of, we don't believe that's the government's role to create jobs. That's not the government. It's not the government's role to interfere and get involved in all of those things. If the companies come here, great, they produce jobs, provide economic, freedom and prosperity, wonderful. But let the many people would argue, well, okay, Chase, that sounds great. How are you going to do that? Wonderful, but we want to just see the free market play out. And what does that look like?
So traditionally, I would say that is the case, right? And that's what I believe. But I think there is an extent there where I have to say, am I an ideologue or do I fix the issue? And this is a
But it's that
yeah,
it's that small little recession, a step here and a step here, which then,
I
but
can agree with that, but the issue that I have only with that is we compete against Texas, we compete against Florida, we compete against all the other states. I mean, Mississippi are beating us. I mean, they're handing our tail ends to us. And part of that is coming because no one is working actively to say, hey, it's just that we have the workforce, number one, a non-expensive workforce compared to what it would be in the northern states. It's part of the reason why the South is having so much innovation. Now, I agree that I am not going to say this is how it shall be done because I am a congressman and that's how it shall be,
yeah.
right? I'm not ruling from on high. I don't like that. I like the states to control the power and the authority. The only issue I have with that is I've met the people that have the power and authority in the state of Arkansas, and they have no clue. So I want to guide them. I want to utilize my office to say, this is an opportunity for you to bring this to Arkansas. I've got them on the hook. Now you take it from here. Because I do believe that the states are the most powerful. That's the formation of this republic. But at the end of the day, I have state legislature folks that are still arguing about things that are 30 and 40-year-old information that has nothing to do with the American, that has nothing to do with the American family. And it's an ego contest back and forth. And the only people that are losing in this situation is the American, the child. I mean, it bothers me that our education is so poor in Arkansas. How do I ever, if I get the jobs, how long will I be able to keep them if my children can't read and write?
Yeah.
That becomes a major issue and a major problem. So I agree with you that there shouldn't be full federal overreach. But at the end of the day, I want the businesses there. They take it from there, and then you don't hear from me again.
Mhm.
But I do want new businesses in my area.
Yeah,
That's the way I get to get away.
yeah, no, listen, I
I
appreciate
want to
that.
give the laugh.
I'll just say, one of the excuses that we often hear from lawmakers, well, we have to be competitive. So that's why we're going to do X, Y, Z. And so we have to be competitive with, yeah, we have to be competitive with all of these other states. And that's why you have this horrible piece of legislation that's going to be on the ballot in November 2026. That's nothing more than just welfare handouts to your favorite buddy in a particular district.
Opportunity zone. Yeah,
I'm talking, well, not just opportunity zones, yes, but I mean that's part of it.
I know. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and so we saw a lot of legislation like that here in Arkansas. Something else that I want to ask you about, and which you're familiar with since you had to file, the Republican Party of Arkansas. This was a hot topic. They raised the filing fees 2025. This, of course, did not hit your race. This filing fee, but the year before in 2023, whenever Penzo primaried Womack, right before then, they're like, oh, wait, we need to hike this up from 15 to 30. They say, oh, well, this, brings in money and helps boost GOP support for the nominees. That's what the state party says. I think a vast majority of people would say Arkansas has the highest filing fees, Republican filing fees in the country. It's absurd. It's shameful. And it's, basically an incumbent protection plan.
It is.
Not to answer this for you or put words in your mouth, but how do you see it? And was this a hurdle for you in filing?
So I'll tell you this: my campaign staff can attest to this. When the meeting happened, when the RPA met, I told them, I said, let's go ahead and prepare for a $50,000 filing fee. So let's go ahead and we're going to gear ourselves for a $50,000 filing fee. And they're like, well, it's already 30. I said, yeah, well, the odds of my office being the only one they don't change is pretty slim to none. And I had heard, of course, I had a lot of friends that were telling me, hey, it's going to probably happen. So you probably need to prepare for that. It's okay, no problem. Do I like it? Absolutely not. That's why I'm the only person right now that's even trying to run to unseat an incumbent.
Yeah.
I'm the only person running that's running against a Republican right now in a primary system. I'm the only federal officer trying to unseat a federal officer. And there's a reason for that, because $30,000 buys me somewhere around a month's worth of media. In any other state in the Republic, it's $500, $1,500. When I first went to work in Michigan for the first time trying to get Republicans elected, I was like, okay, we got to raise money for your filing fee. And, I was just accustomed to this crazy filing fee. And he said, it's $500. It's $500. I said, okay, well, that's easy. I said, yeah, it would be $30,000. Yeah. And he's like, what? I was like, yes, absolutely. So it affects people that want to run for office. One thing that I personally feel is that if people want to run for office, they need to. And I don't think that should be a pediment to get in the way. It absolutely is geared towards keeping incumbents in power. It's not just that. It's that, Rotary is not supposed to have political events, but then the Rotary has just the elected officials.
Yeah.
And so the power of incumbency is immense in our state, unfortunately. And, it's one of those situations I could sit back and I could throw my hands up and say, oh, well, it's too tough. But that's not the American way, right? You can ask my folks on my campaign staff. I told them, I said, Kent is not in the dictionary. Kent doesn't exist. That's not American. That's not the way we do things. I built myself out from poverty, and I've gained myself up 2 rungs. I would consider myself. And there's nothing that's going to stop me other than the ability to just not do it. Mm-hmm. So yes, I agree. It's bad, but at the end of the day, it's just another hurdle. And if I can't raise enough money to pay that filing fee, then I really don't belong there anyway.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this, if this happens for me, I will be there at that meeting and say, we don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah.
$50,000 to run for governor is insane for a state that it's almost more than what you make to be governor. It's a little crazy. It's a little crazy for me. And the governor's safe. She's got more money than the Croesus. So, she's good. And I don't attack Sarah.
Sure.
We're going to have some differences because her and her family have known this man for 2 years longer than I've been born. So I know that that's coming. I've already prepared myself, and that's okay. That's all right. I know that what I want for the state of Arkansas outweighs any filing fee or any connections or any buddy system. We're going to do all right. We're going to be fine.
Yeah. How do you see the landscape? And then we can talk policy just for a bit. How do you see the landscape of Arkansas? If you've been a Republican for many, many years now, Arkansas. Do you see the landscape here changing at all? And how does that correlate to what we see on the national level? There's this, I don't know if it's necessarily tension is the right word, but, America First, which I guess that's now can't say that. ADL came out and said, no, that's anti-Semitic. So don't say America first. But you have this America first. Um,
Well,
that's a whole nother topic. But
America, it's not a race.
yeah, but versus kind of this, Republican Party establishment and just the just how it's the friction that it's caused within the base, not just Arkansas, but you see it across in other states. What is your opinion on that? And how do you plan to bridge that gap or that divide?
So I am a Republican. I don't know of that very many people that are in the state of Arkansas that are.
Yeah.
I'm going to be quite frank, but I am a Republican. And what does that mean? To me, I represent the people that have no political ideology, no identity. They don't really know. Only thing I know about the Arkansas life and the American life is that mom and dads wake up. They're now having to work a 60-hour week. And they come home and they got to help their kids with new math. I don't know why math changed. I don't know what to. Traditional math got us to the moon.
By the way.
Yeah, well, it is. So I have 6 little girl cousins that I've tried to help. And I said, y'all, I don't understand any of this, but this is how you do it.
Yeah.
Right. But we changed education that blocks parents out. Their kids come home. They're looking at what they're being taught. And I think the American people woke up and they said, well, I don't like the Democratic Party, but this Republican Party is a little interesting too. And I think that really what happens is when I say the middle, I'm not talking about bending to Republican ideology. What I'm saying is you educate the population of what it truly means to be a Republican. I don't want to bother you. Government shouldn't belong in your lives. Small government, less spending, all of these things across the board. I don't see that in Little Rock. I sure don't see it in Washington. And there's things, look, I'm not a rubber stamp for the president. I'm not a rubber stamp for the White House. I'm not a rubber stamp for the Arkansas State Party. I'm not a rubber stamp for the Republican Party. I am a rubber stamp for what the people of this district and this state and what's best for it. Okay. That's what leadership is. So there are things that the White House has done that I don't appreciate and I do not like. I don't like the spending, right? I think it's bad. What he said today, the president does not have unilateral authority over elections.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, and a lot of people, and we're kind of all over, but another thing. Well, no, I mean I have the, but obviously, a source of contention here in Arkansas, paper ballots, election integrity. You have the Heritage Foundation saying, "Oh, you're number one in election integrity." We have others who would argue very differently, and you also have the president though who is for a lot of the things that these grassroots organizations and people who want, but then you hear what he says today and it was like, oh well, some may view that verbiage as unconstitutional where he can't come in and dictate from a federal level, so
yeah. So someone that's worked with the White House, I can tell you this. I respect the president, 6-piece deals. There's a lot of things that the president does right. President likes kicking anthill. That's just the way it is. So what he really has done with this is he's kicked people into overdrive to get it fixed.
Yeah.
I don't think the president even thinks he has authority over that. But the problem is that we have a group of people that are new to politics that think that the president should. The problem with me is if Barack Obama says that, if Bill Clinton would have said that, if Joe Biden would have said that, or Kamala Harris would have said that, I would be through the roof. So I got to put it through the same lens. If I wouldn't like the Democrats to do it, I'm sure not going to like it if Republicans do it. Because I'm going to tell y'all something. When they get back in power, we're in trouble.
Yeah, and
a lot of punitive damages that will happen.
And that's something that we say at Conduit a lot. When, Republicans were pushing legislation through or whatever, they were looking to ban this or ban that. And it's like, you won't always be in power.
It's a respect thing. So I respect the American people to not play games with their lives. And that's a major issue that I have is that we play a lot of games with people's lives. And I don't like that. My dad unfortunately had to work as a truck driver and he was never home. So I got to see my daddy very short periods of time in my life. And it was precious time, right? When my family was together and one unit. It was a beautiful thing for me. And I grew up in a beautiful childhood, so don't think that I didn't. But how I had to build myself out and I through college and working 2 jobs and doing all this kind of stuff. If I look now, it hasn't been that long since I've done that. I don't know if I could right now. Interest rates through the roof. It infuriates me that Powell will not lower interest rates. There are people in this state that are having to foreclose their home because things changed, because someone told them to do a 5, 10, 15 mortgage instead of doing a 30-year mortgage. So they got caught with an 8% interest rate during the Biden years. They can't afford it. It is not fair to play games with the American people's lives. The American people are our most most valuable asset. And the idea that we just play around with it and trade them like tokens, it's infuriating to me, because an effective government, which I know that that's an inflammatory thing to say, good government, good, I get that, I understand that.
Yeah, you
But
know where we stand.
at the end of the day, to be an effectively ran, what the Constitution said, what the founders wanted, you don't play lies with people.
Yeah.
You don't play with their lives. You don't try to play and use them as chess pieces. And I just don't have time for that. And that's where I say I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing the single mom. First of all, we had too many, that's a whole nother other issue that I can't do anything about. But we had a lot of single moms out there that work a long, hard day's work, and then they come home and they're like, well, my goodness, groceries have went up again.
Yeah.
Right? Gas is up again. These things are up again. Gas can go up because of EPA regulations or some craziness. And when they're in power with us, it can be something completely different. So sometimes it looks like the same coin and not even a different head. It's just, it turned from red to blue, but it's the exact same things that are going on. And you see that in the new Congress. The new Congress seems to be sliding back into that Bush-style neocon kind of watered down Republican way.
People see it. I do think that people see it. I think it's just, getting people unelected and others elected. So, Milton Friedman, he had 4 points of what he, wanted government to do, or what he believed government was to do. What do you want from government, or what do you see as the primary role, and that's it?
Infrastructure is something I feel like government's responsible. So, nuclear power is one of those things. I'm very pro nuclear power. I want to take all of our oil and gas and I want to sell that to Europe. They're buying it from Russia. They're buying it from the Middle East. If they're buying our oil and gas, those countries, they go belly up. There's nothing left for them. They no longer have economies. I think that nuclear power is great for America, because we are having rolling blackouts in this country. Why should we ever have a rolling blackout? On the way here, we saw solar farms that's on rich, fertile soil. I don't hold that. Right?
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious. I think that that's fine for Arizona. I think that's fine for New Mexico.
Yeah.
I think that's fine to use it even on federal lands, that you can put that in. It doesn't affect the ecosystem like the EPA tries to say. First of all, me and the EPA will never get along.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. I'm sorry. I don't like death. That means that my input costs for transportation in this country is more expensive. It's just regulatory burden after burden after burden. And yes, every politician says that too. But what I have seen, and what I am happy about with this administration, Lee Zeldin leading the EPA, taking all that burden off. Kennedy and I differ on some of the opinions, but Robert Kennedy, that's a Democrat that now has taken over, and he has done very well, I think, with the Department of Health and Human Services, and he is allowing parents to make decisions. Okay, doesn't matter if I like them or not. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what this country is supposed to do. I get out of the way, and even though going back and pinpointing, I'm going to get out of the way. I want businesses to take off. I want Arkansas businesses to grow and to expand. That's what I want. I just know that in some parts of my district, I have to have a big business come in, because it's got to support the small businesses that then are they're accessories to that. They're parks up, having a big business in that area. And I don't want it to be a Canadian-owned paper plant or a Chinese-owned paper plant or a Russian-owned this. That's why I don't like private equity firms. Private equity firms took Sears and Roebuck and ran it in the ground. Payless Shoes, someplace that most parents could get that. Those private equity firms are destroying our country. They're just as bad as some of these bigger corporations. And I want to take some of the tax burden or the tax benefits that they get from that. We're rewarding that instead of actually saying, no, you're going to use that as income instead of it being capital gains. I'd like to see that is going to be an income tax, not a capital gains tax. So therefore they invest. And I would like to see that businesses retain their employees for a period of time. So the longer you retain your employees and you hire new employees, and you get better tax breaks on that. And that's for everybody, not big business, small business. That's for all businesses, to where retaining your employees, that means you have growth and development. Majority of businesses in this country, and this is not anything new, they fire their employees after 5 years because they want to hire new people at a lower rate. But if I'm giving you the reward by saying, if you will build a good culture in your business, now what I mean by reward was the tax break.
You saw that.
Well, I think that's as a small business for having a tax break, that's a reward.
Sure. Okay.
But that is a carrot that, yes, is offered by the federal government. But the thing is if I take those people that were making $25,000, now they're making 50 or 60, they're no longer on my Medicaid.
Yeah.
So I'm saving money by doing that.
Okay.
But that's the kind of progress that I see that we can have in this country, is a reward American industry. We reward American development and the American worker, but we do that through tax breaks, not handouts. So none of this is a handout. handout. This goes across the board for every business. It doesn't matter if you have 2 and you've grown to 4, or if you have 4,000 or 4
Yeah.
million.
I think that'd be interesting because as far as the tax breaks, again, that's something that has been done here in Arkansas. I'm sure that you've seen whether it's for, student athletes at colleges with, what did the NIL or something like that, or just a particular carve outs again for tax incentives and tax breaks for certain industries. Whereas Arkansas, and this is something that we saw often during the session, and Arkansans would comment on these pieces of legislation, and they'd be like, you know what? Like, what about us? Like, why is there a carve out for this business? Why is there, an incentive for this company? And I think,
I want a blanket. So I'm not picking one industry over
Okay.
another, because now I'm picking winners or losers.
That's right.
I'm saying across the board. If you own
Okay.
business, you have employees, you grow that by
Yeah.
25%, but you retain your employees 5-year, 10-year, 15. Kind of think of it in a model. So I'm a businessman, so I only know how to think of it in this way. Think of it in a way that the longer you're a customer with someone. So the longer you're a customer with, I don't know, I hate to throw out a brand, but let's say DirecTV. I'm just saying,
Sure.
for instance, right? Don't sue us over that. Always get uncomfortable talking about big businesses. So I'm afraid they always have a
Yeah.
team that's ready to go. Well, let's say you have DirecTV, you're with them for 15 years, you get money off your bill, right? It's the same thing. If you hold a retainer and you hold your employees for a long period of time, 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year, that's majority. So your average of your employee retention rate is 5, 10, 15, and you get more off of your
Okay.
taxes from the federal government. And I think that's a great thing, because that reinvesting goes back into here. NAFTA killed us.
Yeah.
NAFTA killed us, and everything moved overseas. Well, how do I lower input costs? Because I can't compete against slave labor. Our businesses can never compete against
Yeah.
it. So we have to look at what can we do, and the way that we do this, tariffs are a temporary thing. They're not going to be forever, right? But they're temporary.
Time code that Chase said this was.
They'll be temporary.
Okay.
Now, there's always going to be tariffs.
I was going to ask you about that because I read where you were like, well, I'm in support of strategic tariffs. And again, to go back to one of our favorite economists, Milton Friedman, he's like, a tariff is a tax. Like no way around it. A tariff is a tax that is passed on to the consumer. And we can talk about it any way we want to, dress it up, make it look fancy, look at what we're getting, look at what record, but it's a tax.
It is. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to the American people and tell them it's not a tax.
Okay.
But
well, there are many who are.
Well, there's a lot to tell a lot of lies.
Okay.
But I try to be as honest as I can be. But this is the thing. You have industries that have moved to China. The only way that I'm going to be able, and yes, it is manipulation of the market if you really want to talk.
Yes, it is.
It is. But the problem is, do you want to continuously keep boosting up our enemies, or do you want to buy the American-made product? And that's just kind of the option there. We're not in, if I believe in a free economy. I do. I don't want to do this, but the issue is I'm not dealing with people that are good. I'm not dealing with people that have our best interests or have any of the same interests that we do. So what we have done is we have taken all of the trillions of dollars worth of investment and we put it in nations that want to blow us up and they don't want anything to do with us. So what we do temporarily, yes, and it is a temporary, but GE has moved back. All of these things have moved back. And what's going to eventually happen is, yes, you might pay another $50 to $100 more for the GE washer and dryer because it's made in America over buying the Samsung or whatever the foreign brand is. But at the end of the day, that median income that I'm talking about rises. So those people now go from having a job that's $25,000 to maybe $30, $40, $50, $60,000. So it's a moving of the whole nation up. But I agree with you. It is a tax. I've never denied that it wasn't a tax, but that's why I want to take income tax and let's lower that on down and we'll offset it.
Get rid of it.
Well, I don't like income tax. I agree, but I also, it varies because I'm going to be quite frank with you. I grew up extremely poor. Now that when I let this job, I'm not going to say what I would make per month per contract with doing politics, but what I will say is I prefer a property tax over an income tax. If you build yourself up, property tax I can control. If I want to live in a trailer house in Arkansas and pay only $1,000 to $1,500 for property tax, that's fine. Or I can live in a $2, $3, $4 million house and pay $5,000 to $6,000. But on an income tax, I hate it because it punishes the worker. It says, hey, you're good enough to go to work and you're moving this country forward, but we're going to take that money away from you. So yeah, I would like to get rid of an income tax, but I'm not going to promise that to the American people because I can't deliver. I can't deliver. We don't even have enough in the house to even try that.
Yeah,
So
no, I
here we
agree.
are.
What about the federal debt ceiling limit? We've seen nearly every Arkansas lawmaker there in DC vote in support of raising it, would you make a commitment not to do that?
Yes. So let me tell you this. I told everybody, even before I announced to run, that I would have voted for a continued resolution one time. And that was when we first got back into session because no one had even got the dust settled in their offices.
Yeah.
But they kicked the can. They've been more worried about cryptocurrency and this whole nonsense instead of focusing on what is the major issue, which is our spending problem. Reagan said it famously, multiple people have, Republicans across the way. We do not have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem, and it is massive and it's comical. It's not comical. I used to think it was comical, but it's angry and enrages me what we spend money on, snails on a treadmill and just whatever. If it's crazy and you think about it, we're paid for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost imaginary. It seems like a spit in the face to the American people what we spend money on and how we spend it in other countries, right? So when they say, oh, well, there's hungry children and they can't read and write. Okay, well, I can tell you what, I can take you into 4 neighborhoods in my district. It's
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing. So my children are in bad shape. My next generation are in bad shape. You know, there's a few studies out there, only 10% of this Gen Alpha and Gen Z actually love America and don't apologize for it. There's nothing to apologize in this country. We have made mistakes, but we fix them and address them quicker than 1,000-year-old empires. I'm proud of what we've done in this country, but that messaging, and what bothers me is it's the Reagan renegades that let it fall by the way.
Yeah.
My parents' generation with me, they didn't exchange the same ideas with their children that this is a great country because they had it great, right? It's not inherited. We have to keep working for
Yeah.
this. Uh,
Yeah. What about the big beautiful bill? Would you have voted for that? You know, again, Republicans all there, and not only did they vote for it, they praised it. We're continuing to see the state party and others praise the big beautiful bill. Why would you not have voted for it then?
well, the first thing I told people is some of them didn't even get it before they voted on it. Or they had it, they said, I only had it for 3 hours. I'm not voting for anything that's 1,200 pages.
Yeah.
I've given you legislation that I've worked on. And of course, now every bit of legislation I've worked on, do I feel like that's the way it's going to look by the time it's done? Nope. And there could even be chances that there's many congressmen that put good bills forward and then they don't vote for it when it goes to the floor because they can't even tell what their child looked like.
Yeah.
Bills are kind of like children. You put them up there, you want them to do well, you know this is what's great for America. But by the time you actually go to vote for it, it doesn't resemble anything of what you presented. But no, I couldn't have voted for the big beautiful bill, and I apologize to the American people that there are politicians that are out there, and someone that I thought a lot of, which was Mike Johnson, which will be my speaker hopefully again. No, it's not a good bill. It's not good. There was a lot of different things that we could have done from that bill, which was good. But what I don't understand, Senator Bozeman, all of these people keep pushing this agriculture bill. We got to have
Yeah.
got to have an ag bill. When Jan ran for office in 2022, that was the whole reason. We got to get elected so we can get the ag bill. Why was it in this? Why did we run the whole government through one bill? Right? That's not what you do. And you do that when you're trying to hide things, when you're trying to allocate money, when you're trying to earmark things. And look, everybody that's elected right now, they're going to say, well, it's a lot easier to say that than it is to be done. You're only 435 people, and you mean to tell me y'all can't get enough to stand up
I
and
don't
just say,
know. Look
no?
at Massey. He tried to do a one item, and it got nowhere.
Yeah, well, it won't. I've got a bill in there, Stop the Pork Act. Do you think that's going to get passed? No. But do you
Yeah.
think every year that I'm elected, I'm
Sure.
going to present it because I want it done? Because the thing is anything that I vote for, I'm going to be able to put on a billboard, and I'd be proud of it.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. Now, I believe in compromise, and there are things, a compromise on a percent here or a percent there, but you see a percent here, a percent there, not an allocation of $500 billion for
Yeah.
pigeons in, Switzerland. That's not something that I'm going to vote on or even present or even be okay with. But a lot of these problems also rise from committees. They rush things through. I like the president. I appreciate the president. But it doesn't matter if he would have called me, I'd have said, I'm sorry, man, I can't do this. You didn't even give it to me. Do you know what's in it? Like those are the kind of questions that I think that you have to take seriously at $37 trillion.
Yeah.
It's a major issue. We're itching into where we're spending 206% of our GDP, which is bad. It's really, really bad that we're in this element. We're starting to look a little bit like Japan and some of these other countries, and that's terrifying to me.
Yeah. So just before we go, you do have some proposed legislation here. A lot of great stuff in here. A few, I'm like, Chase, I don't know about some of this stuff, such as the basically like the Feed Every Child Act. There is, that is an expansion. Is it the government's role? Every Child Eats Act.
So basically what we're doing is we're taking the $38 billion that's already allocated, and instead of it going into the home where they're not feeding their children, they're going to do it at school. So they're not feeding these children. And I agree with you. It shouldn't be my I don't have children, but it shouldn't be my responsibility to feed those kids. But at the end of the day, the parents are not doing what's right. And people say, we'll take the kids away from them. Well, we already have an overflow of these kids in foster care. I don't think that's the right element either. I have a soft spot for children. I'm not going to say that I don't. I do. That's why I've been so adamant against the president releasing the Epstein files. And we need to make sure that all of this stuff is done appropriately because they're children. Children don't have any money. They have nothing, right? And they're now being given a world that's not so great. But in this, Arkansas is already doing it. Most states are already doing this. What this is it actually increases what the development is in the actual school system itself, which I agree. Some people don't like public schools. I mean, I know I've heard it all. I've heard every argument. Public schools are socialist and we shouldn't have them. It should only be private schools. It should only be this. And in a perfect world, I would love for a fact that every child was taught at home, or we had community schools like we used to do a long time ago. Is that practical in this day and time? I don't know. That's also a local issue. It's going to cut spending from the states. Your property taxes, if they do a freeze, which I can't say that that's what they're going to do, but they should be able to do a property tax freeze because a lot of the investment for this state government and every state government is feeding the kids. It just takes a responsibility that we already allocate in $38 billion anyway. We already do it basically. But what it's done is it just says, look, every kid's going to get it. And it also falls on the whole thing. I don't like the idea that only certain kids get something and another kid doesn't. I don't think that is what we should be doing is, oh, well, you're poor, so you get more than, well, your parents make a little bit too much money. Or there's the avenue that sometimes it happens to where at the beginning of the year, those parents could afford that lunch and then they lose their jobs and then they can't. And then there's a whole embarrassing thing that goes along with that. So it's, it breaks down to $2.50 a day. So you feed a child for $2.50 a day.
Okay. We'll let the people decide on that one. And you have a lot of a lot of good stuff in here. We won't dive into it all. What would you say? Maybe the top, two pieces of legislation or whatever that you would want viewers to know about that you would really like to. You know what? If you elect me, these are the top 2 or 3 things that I'm already working on that I want to get done there.
So the first probably is going to be the PBM elimination of PBMs. Only thing it is they were first instituted in the 1960s under good intent, which was basically they were a middleman that told insurance companies and providers, this is the fairness for, the kids. Or, I mean, for consumers. The issue with it is now they're owned by the insurance company.
Sure.
So CVS and you see that Arkansas has been really good about this.
Well, and they're still tied up in litigation over it.
They will be.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this is $1 trillion industry they're running against. But what it does is your prescriptions have went up. It's all due to Obamacare. We already had it, but then we gave them full authority to where they could own it. The issue is that CVS wants to be your doctor. They want to be your pharmacy. They want to be your insurance company. They want to be your PBM. They want to be everything, right? Monopolies are never good in that situation because the only body that loses out is the consumer in that. So what I've done is just said it's a full elimination. It's a full elimination. Independent pharmacies and doctors and clinics and whatnot are going to be able to argue their own contracts like it used to be. I think it makes it better. Healthcare will be cheaper because it is so many billions of dollars that are invested in this, hundreds of billions every year that go towards this. And if you see, we have deserts now in our state where there's no Walgreens has shut down.
Yeah.
Yes. And our independents were there. 3,000 independent pharmacies have been shut down. And within each one of those 3,000 pharmacies are 5 to 10 to 15 good paying jobs across this country. I've fought it all from 48 states. I was in 48 states fighting that, helping independent pharmacies try to navigate and do compounding. And that's something CVS and Walgreens is not going to do. I am thankful that Walmart's joined in on this. And they're like, hey, this is a problem. This is a major issue for us. It took them, I think, getting in and trying to help to get this fixed. But it's, healthcare is in a bad position in this country, and the American family can't afford it, and it shouldn't be in that way. But the reason why it is that way is because of these monopolies. They control every part, everything that you do. The second one's definitely going to be how we're going to take care of our veterans. I'm tired of them being a pawn. I'm tired of talking about it. I don't want it fixed. We have a bad mental health problem in our country when it comes down to veterans. A lot of it, they're terrified and afraid to even talk about it because they'll never be able to deploy again. I want this to be a no-fault conversation that they can have with someone that is licensed and ready to go. And we're going to make sure that they're not on the street. We got a homeless problem, but we definitely shouldn't have a homeless veterans problem. So I'm trying to dedicate that money to that. But every bill that I have, I've got 2 that spend a little bit of money, right? And in the grand scheme of things, it's a little bit of money compared to what they usually do in Washington. But the other ones more than make up for it from the cost savings that we're going to have associated with it. And that's just the PBM alone pays for my bills, plus it leaves over $100 billion less.
All right. Is this public?
They're going to be on my website.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we can point people to your website eventually, and they can get online.
Yeah, they should be able to by the end.
Okay, all right.
I'm very particular, so I didn't know how I wanted my formatting.
Yeah, that's okay. We've covered a lot of ground. Anything else that you would want the viewers to know? Of course, I have more questions, but I know that we need to wrap it up. But what else would you want?
So my campaign's funded by the American people. I'm not funded by JP Morgan. I'm not funded by the crypto kings. I mean, y'all can do your own research on that because I'll just sound bitter if I.
We do our fault. We follow the money here.
But the money's coming from Russian CEOs, Chinese CEOs that have moved to this country and they're invested in this crypto nonsense.
You're talking about for French Hill.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah. I'll let you do the research on that. You can do it. So I'm not trying to be too one-sided on that, but we're at somewhere around, I think, 5,300 people that have donated to the campaign across the country, right? Small donors. Hey, I like grass-fed. I like it. I like grass-fed beef, and I like our grass-fed campaign, man. I mean, it's working for me. I like it. I do a lot of things that are folks that they're like, I've never had a Republican come and talk to me. I said, well, good. Maybe you are a Republican. And I think that's part of it. I don't like the whole country club, that whole, cocktail parties. And that's why I never was a young Republican. I worked with Turning Point, and I worked with these groups, and we got people to the polls, and we got things done. And when I've had candidates, that's who we relied on. I didn't rely on young Republicans. I didn't rely on the Republican Party. They waste more money than, they just do. They waste money when it comes down to campaigning. I mean, you can ask my campaign staff. We've got people elected, and it's been because of third party, separate groups, and we worked hard to get those folks elected. So, you got an opportunity to get somebody in that's going to do the right thing, and, I'm going to do everything that I can to whip the state into shape from all four corners. You need one leader in Washington, right? I'm fine with doing that. I'm not one that's going to send your sons and daughters to war. I can tell you that. I'm not happy about that either. I don't want to go through, and I'm not going to attack every person that's elected in this state, but I don't see the representation of my people in Washington. And it's not just the poor people, right? Everybody's like, oh, well, the only thing you seem to talk about is just the American family and how bad they're doing. I think that the American family is doing better than they've ever done before, but it can be better. I never look at anything and say, well, that's good. I'm never satisfied. I have extremely high expectations, very low tolerance.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's necessary for us because we really, I think y'all are aware, who is our firebrand? Who's a firebrand for Arkansas? There's not one.
Yeah.
Every state has one. We don't have a Nancy Mace or a Byron Donalds or a Thomas Massey or we just don't have them. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to get a lot of exposure for our state and people to see how beautiful it is here. There are a lot of folks that live in blue states that they want to leave and they don't want to bring their politics.
I was about to say.
They don't want to bring their politics with them. They want to move and they want to enjoy living a life where their taxes aren't through the roof and their kids not being taught by somebody that has more metal in their face than their Buick outside. Like, they want a good life, a good American Norman Rockwell painting. And that's every time I've traveled outside of this, outside of our state, almost at our country. Sometimes I feel like we are a country, but our own state. I sit there and I say, y'all just don't understand. I grew up in a Mayberry and a Norman Rockwell painting, and I want that.
Norman's always wonderful. Yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, we have one of the most beautiful states in the Republic. Alaska does have a speed. I can't say that, but that's between me.
And everybody else.
But anybody that's been to Alaska, I have to admire.
It's pretty.
But when they talk about, the Boston Mountains are beautiful.
Yeah.
Boston Mountains are beautiful. Our state's beautiful. And I want people here. I'm looking forward to winning this office and actually giving Arkansas a chance. I feel like we don't have it right now. That's what.
To direct people to your campaign, you're on the road, your website, to donate, get involved.
Yeah, it's going to be McDowell for Arkansas. So you can go to McDowell for Arkansas. Of course, social media is McDowell for Arkansas, Chase McDowell. You just type the name in, you'll find me. I'm on almost everything. I have to have some of my campaign staff help me with some of the social media stuff. Even though I'm a millennial, I was like, there's a new one. There's a new one.
Yeah.
There's another.
Lot.
They were trying to explain to me how to do threads on X. I never did Twitter because it was always a liberal space, right? Now we do this whole X thing, and he's like, we got to do a thread. And I said, what?
Yeah.
Like looking around. I don't know what you're talking about. I feel old. I feel antiquated in this thing, but that's why I got the Gen Z folks
Good.
to help me with that. But yeah, we're on everything. traveling in.
TikTok? Are y'all on TikTok?
Yes, I'm on TikTok.
Wow. Okay.
Now I will tell you this. I was one of the only Republicans. That
Wow.
I'm like, no, TikTok's good.
Yeah.
I get a lot of good stuff off of TikTok.
Yeah.
Yes, I know everybody says it's Chinese, but that's what
Mhm.
Facebook and everybody too.
Yeah. I mean, right.
If you're on social media, you're being watched in Russia, Moscow, and Beijing. Everybody,
Right.
everything. So I always smile pretty. But no, I'm excited. I think Arkansas has a good opportunity. I think the campaign's in good shape, and I hope that y'all follow, join us on our journey. We're we're a ragtag group trying to make America better.
All right. Well, you'll have to keep us updated on the campaign. Of course, we'll reach out to Representative French Hill, see if he'll come on and do an interview with us for this primary election season. But we appreciate you coming in and talking with us.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.